Okay, I think we're about to go live now. Just going to update the information here. Oops. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to update the title of this live stream and add a link to the description box. Actually, add two links to the description box. So we'll just wait to see if, as people come in. There we go. Hopefully that should be adjusted now. And okay, so yeah, we are live. Hi everybody. Let me just get everything in order here. I'm still getting used to this live stream things. So yes. Hi everyone. I'm Kristen, a business astrologer, a data scientist, a spiritual advisor for female founders and also female leaders in general. I find that a lot of my clients haven't necessarily started their own business yet, if that's something that they even want to do, but they are self-led women regardless, with multifaceted lives. They've got families, they've got responsibilities of all kinds. They've got families, they are running businesses, they are leaders in their own right, creative spiritual women. So, welcome to the live stream and thank you for joining. And as you see, today's topic is dating for marriage as a spiritual woman. So, I used to talk a lot about dating on here. And in fact, that's really one of the main reasons why I started a YouTube channel was because of a very activating experience that I had while I was dating. Um, about 5 years ago, or actually about 6 years ago. And it really woke me up. It was really the start of my spiritual journey. And long story short, I was not showing up in the way that I thought that I was, actually repelling a lot of the guys that I claimed that I wanted to date and be with. And so I had to really fix that about myself. And perhaps maybe even this video right now, this live stream now is kind of piggybacking off of that and kind of where I've kind of, grew from there. So, yes, the topic is dating for marriage as a spiritual woman. And so I know many words in this topic can be very triggering. Um, the word dating is very triggering. The word marriage is triggering. The word spiritual is very triggering, and so is the word woman. Those are all very triggering words, and so I put all of them in one video title. So we're just going to go there. And so, what do I mean by spiritual? Um, just in a rough definition, you are spiritual if you integrate the self, 5 points. The self, how you perceive yourself, your worth, your identity, the mental, the health of your mind, your mindset, your mental diet, the emotional control and expression that you have, the feeling state, the spiritual, your higher purpose and connection with God, source, spirit realm, the ancestors, any of that that's above our 3D plane, our natural realm that we're living in now, and the physical, how you love and take care of your body. And so, if all of those are important to you, then I'd say that yes, you are spiritual. And if you are actually acting those out as the best as you can. And I'll even add how you treat others, how you treat other living beings, the right and dignity of the person, etc., etc. That's also very spiritual, because as how you identify yourself, that comes off in how you interact with everything else, everyone else around you. So, if you decide to date for marriage as a spiritual woman, you will consider these things. And these essentially are your values. Excuse me. But, as we all know, people love to cosplay anything serious, and that's including spirituality and relationships. These are very um, these are topics that are always going to be popular topics and things that get people arguing about and so on and so forth. And then there's also a lot of people thinking that they know everything because they know a little bit. And I believe that that's probably the Dunning-Kruger effect, probably somewhat of that. And so many of you might know about my story with dating for marriage. I married my husband within 6 months of meeting him, and that was very intentional on my part before I even met him. And I actually have something for you towards the end of this video, and I'll be on here up to the top of the hour. Right now is 4 o'clock p.m. Central. We're going to cook dinner around we're going to start to cook dinner around 5 o'clock. So I've got another hour on here, just FYI for everybody. Um, so on the outside, it probably looked like that was a very rushed, hasty decision. And it did confuse a lot of people. It confused people that were close to me. And they probably thought I was a little bit out of my mind because I didn't really truly announce anything until we were officially engaged. But internally, I had gotten to a really good point in my spiritual journey where I was honest about myself and who I was and who my ideal husband would be. So that's why I was comfortable with that timeline. I was like, well, I have done a lot of this work. There's no point. This is what I was telling God. There's no point in me waiting around unless somehow you want me to wait around for something else. But I had taken 2 years off from dating and was like, you know what? I know what I'm doing. I think I know at this point, once I decided to get back into the game. All right. And so, yeah, so I knew who I was up to a certain point, and I knew that the level of inner work that I was doing, that I had done, I had done all I could do as a single woman. And I knew that because of me having a mentor in this area specifically, who is also now my business mentor, and still she's continuing to mentor me in my relationship also. Um, like I I I knew I had gotten to a good enough point as a single woman, and I was like, okay, then the next level for me to start learning is now as a married woman. So uh, I knew who I was essentially up to that point, and I knew what type of husband I wanted to have because I really took a lot of time thinking about it and considering it and understanding all these things. So, but the purpose of this video or the inspiration from this video really stems from a video that I saw on Instagram and um, just shortly describing this video that I saw that came across Instagram. And it was a clip from a larger podcast interview. And so essentially it was two men who were um, on a podcast. One gentleman was interviewing another one. I don't know who they are. I've never seen them before. But the man who was being interviewed was saying, excuse me, that if there is a couple and one person is spiritual and the other one isn't, that it's automatically not going to last because the energies are just too off, and spiritual people need to be with spiritual people and non-spiritual people need to be with non-spiritual people. And I thought that this was very short-sighted, but one thing I do want to say is that yes, there will be spiritual mismatches, and you should break up, or or just mismatches in values in general. And yes, you should absolutely break up. It will end to a certain point if your values don't align. But a big part of spirituality, and it was just really interesting just to listen to this uh, on this uh, on this video, although, like I said, it was a clip from a much larger interview, so I have no idea if this was covered in other parts of the interview. But a big part of spirituality is dealing with people who don't have the same spiritual values as you, who don't see the world as you do. And in fact, I don't know anyone who sees things exactly the way that I do. My mentor and the other women that are in our community, I don't see things exactly the same way as any of them, including my mentor. I don't see things exactly the way that she does, and I don't want to. And I don't want her to start seeing things the way I do. And that keeps things different. That keeps us as individuals. And I think it's really kind of ridiculous to kind of expect anyone to um have all of the same values, to see things exactly like how you are. There we've all A lot of us have lived multiple lifetimes. Uh we've been here before, perhaps, as far as, this may not be our first lifetime here, this may not be our first life lesson. And so one thing in my spiritual journey that I learned was not everybody is on the same path, and you aren't as um, high and mighty as you think you are. That was something that I had to really understand about myself. I had a lot of growing up to do, and I always will. And that keeps me not ever feeling like I have all the answers or that I figured everything out already. So a lot of people, think that their way of practicing spirituality is the right way, when it's an ongoing journey. And like I said, you know, everyone is on their own journey, that's why we're here on earth, to interact with a lot of different people. Um, and it's just kind of illogical just to assume that we're all going to be on the same page, believing the same things at the same. We're not going to grow. We're not going to grow if we don't learn how to emotionally deal with those who see things different than us. So when I was dating for marriage, the man's spirituality was actually not my biggest concern. I'm not immediately attracted to men who, do yoga or are into astrology or any of the spiritual sciences like that. Like that's not something that immediately, like, in fact, those overly spiritual men, I'm not really attracted to them right off the bat. I'm more attracted to the analytical STEM type men. And that was something that, I looked at as far as when I was dating for marriage, I was looking at all these different archetypes of men and which one is the best fit for me, because polarity was something that I didn't know about until I started to really learn um, dating, marriage, relationships, and dynamics. So polarity was extremely important to me. And if I really wanted to show up and be in my marriage the way I wanted to show up and be in my marriage, I know I needed that polarity to be there. I needed a guy who was looking for my energy and I was looking for his energy, because we both can't be entrepreneurs, spiritual entrepreneurs. I that would lead to a divorce. And I don't even think, I mean, maybe he could still be with like a STEM, woman who may think like him, but I feel like that would actually be quite boring for him. So um both of us really feed off of each other's energy. I keep the energy of the relationship in a very spiritual way. That's my realm. That's my area of expertise, where, the provision is in holding things down, keeping things sturdy. That's his area of expertise. And I did not want to, um, ruin any of that. Um, excuse me. So I was looking at, yeah, how much he can provide for me, how much he can protect me, how much he can respect and appreciate my spirituality, and perhaps if he wants to join it on later. So my husband, he grew up in a Protestant home, and I grew up Catholic. We married in my Catholic parish, and he's always been open to explore, as he is a scientist, and he always appreciated that spiritual part of me, but I didn't require that of him. And he's seen me, he's definitely started to, get more involved with it. Or not necessarily more involved in my spirituality, but he's learned to appreciate it a lot more as he sees me working with my clients and the transformations that I kind of mentioned to him that they experience, and just connecting the dots. Like with him, when I talk about astrology, I call it astro data. And so he definitely um can receive it a lot better when I call it data, which is what it is. And so with me being a data scientist, um, then he trusts that I know what I'm talking about when I'm looking at connecting the dots. I'm looking at the analytics behind it, and so it makes it make more sense versus me, pulling out my horoscope every day, which I don't look at, talking about retrogrades, which I don't actually look at either. But talking about it and seeing it as data, that's something that he can actually process. And I just have to kind of change the terms up a little bit more. But that's essentially how I see it too. Because I wouldn't even necessarily call myself like a very woo-woo astrologer. Like I am a strategist, and I am a data scientist, and I am a coach. So astrology and numerology are my tools. But I do know how to put it down and actually live my life and not get caught up in too much of it, because it's too much of a it's it's a never ending bottomless pit. So anyway, um, yeah, so I never required it of him to um, be interested in astrology, or or even convert to Catholicism. We discuss spirituality and religion a lot all the time, especially his upbringing, and we really don't disagree. It's just that we respect that that's just topics to talk about, and it's much easier for him to kind of explore on his own, because I've made it a safe place for him. Like I don't, like I said, I don't force him to convert to Catholicism. I don't force him into needing to understand everything about astrology, but he's curious about it because he sees how much it lights me up, how much it lights up my clients, and that I simply don't force it on him. So that's a major thing. I don't force anything on him. Um, so let me see, where was I at? I did write down some notes with this. But, what if I were to have blamed him for not thinking the way that I think while we were dating? Like, oh, how come he doesn't get it? I was even on a call um, with some ladies a couple months back, maybe even last year. And one lady said that I believe she's divorced, but she, is thinking about getting back out there and dating again. And I think that's a beautiful thing if that's what she truly wants. And she said that she wants a man who is spiritual, because by this point in time, seeing everything in the world going on, like he should know better by now about understanding spirituality. But and I want her to find that guy if that's truly what her values are. Um, but it can tip into almost kind of being a spiritual supremacist and really kind of shaming people for not having come to the conclusion that you think that they should come to. And so many spiritual people still need to really grow up themselves. I had a client that I met with who wanted to know what this year looked like for her as far as dating, marriage, and a lot of other things that she asked me to look at. But she really wants to get married, and I love that. I'm glad that she has come to that understanding of knowing that's what she truly values. And while I do believe that don't necessarily, we shouldn't actually have the spiritual sciences or anything really be a crutch to what we want to do. If we really are activated with something, yeah, of course we don't necessarily have to look at anything. We don't have to ask anyone questions. We don't have to go ask our priest, ask our husbands or family members or friends or seek an astrologer. We don't have to really do any of those things if we really want to make anything happen. But I do believe that knowing, um, your best, how to really optimize your year, how to really show up in the best way that you can to really maximize your the output that you get to really get the results that you want to have. I do think that it's a good idea to consult, with a spiritual coach of some kind. Um, but when I was talking to her, and I was looking at what I saw for her for this year, is that and I was listening to her and I was looking at what I saw, and there was still a lot of growing up that she still needed to really do. I heard it in her voice. And when I looked at her chart, it was telling me that this literally is not the year for you to sign contracts or to really get into anything deep. It's for perhaps getting into it's about really forming that your values and forming your, getting maybe perhaps even getting into a serious relationship, but not tying the knot. And so as I was listening to her, she was still talking about a man that wasn't quite doing it for her, that she was talking about from before when I had met her before. And I'm thinking, okay, yes, you need to really get clear with your values. And maybe it's not the guy. Maybe it might actually be you. You might not be um, as mature in your spirituality as you think you are. And I feel like when we go down these rabbit holes with spirituality, we start learning things that we've never heard before. We start getting uh, questions answered that we've never had answered before, and we start clicking in. So it gets in our mind and our brains, we are changing our brains. We are rewiring our brains with this new information. But it hasn't become embodied yet in actually who we are. And that's really how I kind of was when I was learning a little bit more about dating and going through my spiritual journey. I was dating, and it still was not working out for me, although I was listening to my mentor who eventually, I eventually got it and got married and everything like that, obviously. But when I was hearing it, I thought hearing it and knowing that information was enough. But it still was not working out very well for me in the dating realm. It was still a hot mess because I hadn't really gotten rid of all of the gunk that was still in me at first, but before I could really reprogram my nervous system and really act and be the wife or the single woman that was dating for marriage, but be that wife that I wanted to be in my head. And that's still an ongoing thing. So, essentially, what I am saying is don't expect that much out of people. My husband has come a long way. Like, we go to the beach. We don't do it as much as we used to, but I would take my crystals. He would help me box up my crystals and take them to the beach and have the sunlight. cleanse them, have the moonlight cleanse them. We would go on full moons a lot. And he really appreciated that, but I never shamed him into um, already understanding all of these things. He just wanted to be around me and learn about the things that I liked. And he's coming along with it, and he likes learning about the archetypes and learning about himself a lot. He's even started to ask me now about his chart. I've done his chart already, but I never push it on him. I never force it on him. But he's come to ask about questions about himself, and he'll ask me to, perhaps do a report that I'm doing on another client or look into something. He'll ask me a question and or that he wants answered, and then I'll go look into his astrology and go answer it. Like, we've got a folder that's labeled just for him, his astro data. And he likes to hear me recite it back and give my little bit of advice, and I never hold it against him. But if I were to have started off that way, then he would absolutely have been turned off by that, and I really wouldn't have shown up as the actual spiritual person that I claim that I am. So it's a spiritual journey. And so one thing my mentor says is that, getting married, having children, and starting a business is, you know, definitely a spiritual task. All those tasks will really help you learn about yourself, and you start seeing yourself differently, and those three things will really show you who you are, basically. And it has the capabilities of really stretching you spiritually. So I've got two out of the three: starting a business and being married. And so I think, it's really important that a lot of spiritual people know that it is a journey, and we should absolutely have our minimum requirements. We should have our love lists. I created a love list. Um, because like I said, that I wanted to marry someone Catholic, but I didn't actually end up marrying someone Catholic, but I still had my Catholic wedding because I did date a Catholic guy, and it was a horrible mess. But I still got my Catholic wedding, and I'm no less Catholic just because I married a Protestant. So he still comes to church with me. He wants to come to church. And so you really have to be that example of being that spiritual being in your relationship. And because you're only going to turn off your spouse or who you're dating if you're one of those unapproachable spiritual people. So over analyzing people too soon, trying to put them in the categories of where they fit in, that's really not good. I don't even, you always see these posts online. They're saying, "I'll never date this and that guy. I'll never date this and that guy." A guy who's like a Scorpio or something, or a guy who's a Pisces or something like that. And while some of those I do actually have some rules on myself, but like, see the person for who they are. That's what you really want to look at. All of the astrology part or the spiritual part, um, labeling them just yet is not exactly good. Really know where you stand first, and then you start to know where you stand first. And earthly, what can they do? What do they see for themselves? Because you can't like expect too much out of them too soon. Marriage is a journey, and and it's so much fun later on as you really start to appreciate each other, and that's the spiritual goal. So, all right, if anybody has any questions, I can take a little bit of a break right now. So basically, just to recap, like, this video was inspired by a Instagram video that I saw, where there were two men that were interviewing each other. One was being interviewed by the other one on a podcast, and one said that in a spiritual, if there is a couple and one is spiritual and the other one is not, then that relationship is pretty much doomed to fail. So it's this expectation somehow that the non-spiritual person is to be tossed aside, and the spiritual person is all knowing, all being. And I think that that's just a little silly. So, I do believe that we do attract the reciprocal of who we really are. Like if we start attracting people that and going out on dates and really involving ourselves, dating people that um, really aren't good for us, then we need to really ask ourselves, what am I actually doing? Is my spirituality actually helping me in this regard? But I don't want to be with anyone, and I don't want to be a spiritual person who's got this, like I call it, a spiritual supremacy mindset, where I'm not giving grace to the other person as if they can't grow. Like we're supposed to be growing together. So, but yeah, if it's really truly not a match, okay, great. You absolutely have the right to break up, but just this extreme assumption that the spiritual person is more advanced than the non-spiritual person, I don't think that that's accurate. So I'll just take a little sip of water. And so, um, yeah. And so if my husband decides to never convert to Catholicism, that's okay. When we were going through the vetting process, when my church was vetting both of us for marriage, that's actually something that we both had to do, which that's really the real part. Are you the vetting process? In fact, I'll go over that a little bit in a minute. He had to agree that if we do decide to have children in the union, we're not expected to or forced to by the church, but that we would raise the children Catholic. And so he was fine with that. And he was saying, yeah, he believes that, having some sort of spiritual anchor is important for raising children. So he was absolutely fine with that. Um, so sometimes it's about just making sure that they are at a point where they are still willing to grow. My husband didn't need to have everything figured out about God or everything figured out about religion or spirituality in order for me to marry him. Um, but of course, he didn't necessarily need to be like, someone who hates God or, all any of this stuff. Like if he hated God and didn't believe in anything, then yeah, that would be an instant like mismatch of values. But um it was still important for me to make sure that he was able to that he was, willing to kind of grow, willing to kind of explore more, change his mindset more. And our conversations are great because I don't judge him from his experience or his views or anything like that. And honestly, we've been married for it'll be 2 years in May, and our spiritual conversations just continue to get better. And of course, he's come along board a lot because I give him the truth about what I feel about the church and all of its contradictions and the a lot of the nonsense that even comes from the spiritual community. So I think me being able to call out the BS that comes from every direction and every angle actually helps him. It's more comfortable for him to talk about it because imagine if I was some raging Catholic or some raging astrologer. Um, I don't identify with being raging either one of them. That would scare him off. And that would be extremely judgmental of everybody because I was then, forfeiting actually connecting with someone for, just completely defaulting to whatever system I was, believing in, whether that be Catholicism or astrology. Like, no, this is an actual person. Let me actually not replace actually having real conversations with people for spirit, for scripture. And that is something that I've experienced. I've talked about it before here, where I've had a friend that was very judgmental of a Catholic friend who was very judgmental of me doing astrology and didn't ask me any questions. She instead was throwing a lot of scripture at me. And I'm thinking, why don't we actually sit down and actually talk and actually have conversations? And a lot of times, these conversations will reveal that maybe we need to change about things. Maybe we don't know everything. And then him seeing me grow in my spirituality, him seeing me help other people in their spirituality. I am a spiritual life coach, by the way. That was the first uh, coaching certification that I got about 3 years ago. And so knowing that there's really no peak. It's a way of life. It's ongoing. It takes the pressure off. So I really believe, so this is what I really want to say is really stop putting the pressure on people to meet you where you are, because you may actually be a lot further behind them. Um, don't put that spiritual pressure on who you're dating. Um, because everyone's got their own experience, they've got their own perception of things. And many times people are curious, but they don't even really know who to talk to about it. And as a spiritual person, you should really be open to understanding where they are coming from and not shaming them because they don't get it yet, because they haven't sat there and started it yet. I mean, I even would compare myself before my spiritual journey and now. There had to be for me, there was I know a lot of people don't like this term, but a dark night of the soul. I had that. It was a full loss of my It was, I want to say it was a loss of myself, but it was a loss of the way I was thinking, my mindset at that point, and a real coming to an understanding of my actual and true identity. There had to be a pivotal moment that was like, okay, Kristen, you are not living as you need to be. Here is this big earth shaking mirror that's getting put in your face, and that you need to pivot immediately. Not everybody has had that experience yet, if they will in this lifetime. So just because you had that big pivotal moment that shook you into diving deep into the form of spirituality that you practice, uh, it's don't expect that out of other people. I mean, you look out the window, there's cars driving everywhere. People are living their own lives in their own world, doing their own thing. They think that they're doing good enough. And, if you really are good at being the spiritual person that you want to be, then you then are the example, and they will see that in you, and you will then change their mind naturally. But forcing them into it or just tossing them aside because they're not quite there yet, that shows that there's still a lot of growth needed for you as a spiritual person. Let's see. So I have about another half hour until we're gonna start, maybe about 25 minutes until we start dinner. So yeah, if anyone has any questions about dating for marriage, being a spiritual person, um, and one thing, I just let me know in the chat. One thing I wanted to say was, like, when I was doing my inner work, as I was taking those 2 years off from dating, I and then when I realized, okay, I'm ready to get back in the dating scene, I realized, I'm doing this work for us. And yeah, I know that sometimes it can be like, well, how come they aren't doing the work and I am? True. Maybe they could be the one who's doing their work, but they're doing their own type of work. Like my husband, growing up, getting his education, going to work, moving around the country to gain his experience. the growth that he was expected to do. He talks about how he's lived in so many different states, going to school, going to work, getting his experience. He's got his doctorate in biological sciences. And that's the work that he was becoming before we met. And uh, I do the spiritual work. I mean, of course, we can both do any type of work, essentially. It's not limited to either one of us. But just because he hasn't done the same level of spiritual work that I've done, does not mean that he hasn't done any work at all. It's a whole nother realm. And I think it's really important to respect that, perhaps that is much more of the woman's realm than the man's realm. So I want him to be as good of a man as he can be. And then being open to that growth as time goes on. So just as kind of like a recap, just so I can explain a little bit more of my experience with dating and my spiritual journey. But first, I wanted to go ahead and link a link that I have here. I'll go ahead and pin it to the chat while I do a little bit of story time. But yeah, if anyone has any questions about spirituality or marriage, in today's times, I get it. I met my husband in 2023 and we got engaged. I met him in what, like November 2023. We got engaged. Uh, 2 months later, in January 2024, and we got married in May of 2024. And then we went to the courthouse, and then we had um, our Catholic wedding in September of 2024. So I just linked something here that uh, I actually haven't really promoted it that much, but this is my course from single to married in months that really shows essentially this. I went step by step exactly how I got married in just a few months of from meeting my husband. And like I said, I did this course last year, and right now it's priced at the lowest that I have ever had. Well, no, I've had it for a little lower, but this it's priced at the lowest that I will ever have it anymore. So, this is basically a foundation for women who are driven and who are ready for marriage. There's so much that is, I understand if you don't want to get married, there's a lot of talk about marriage is not worth it, or I know there's so many spiritual people, spiritual women who actually um, they still are very hurt by their past relationships, but instead of them saying, I'm just not ready for it anymore, they are completely saying that they just don't want to be married at all again anymore. They don't want to get remarried. And I get it. I totally understand not wanting, if that's truly what you're done, if you're done with it, I get it. But a lot of times, we still don't even really recognize that we are still speaking from a place of fear. And is it really that this is the highest answer that we have come to, or is this still a very fear-minded conversation that we're having here? And I think we really need to be honest with ourselves about it. If you don't want to be married anymore, okay, cool. But if you're always the one who's saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I don't want to, is this really coming from are you really comfortable with that? I see we got a comment. Hi, Melanie. I think you were in an interview with Mina and you mentioned that your astrologer told you that your year for marriage was far, but you decided to collapse time. Was that your case? Yes, I'm so glad that you saw that video. And in fact, I actually have that video here. I'll put it in the comments if with my mentor, she interviewed me. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat here. I want to take the opportunity of Jupiter in Cancer, my seventh house. I'm single. Okay, so I'll talk about your first question. So yes, I was getting my, I guess that was my first astrology reading that I ever had done. That was on my birthday actually in 2023, and that was in August. I'm an August Leo, and I had my first natal chart reading done by an astrologer. I'd already done my own chart before. And so at the end, I had asked him, um, when will my future husband come? And so he did his little calculations and things. And so he said 4 years from now, which would have been what, 2027? And as little as 2 years from now. And he was like, and I was like, that's a while away. And so he was like, yeah, that doesn't mean that you can't try. And I said, okay. And so that put the fire under my butt where I was like, okay, this is what he's saying. I didn't really understand at the time what exactly he was calculating. I have the recording, so I guess I could go back and rewatch that part just to see what he actually did. But he said that I had just missed it. I had just missed my opportunity. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And but he always left it open as if like that doesn't mean that you can't try or that it or and he also says this could be wrong too. So that wasn't really the focus of that reading. That was just something quick that he did and that I asked towards the end of our consultation. And so that lit the fire under my butt. That was 2023. And I was like, I feel something is completely different. I know he said this, but I know what I truly feel, and I know God is preparing me for that. And I'm like, does God want me to sit for another 4 years, even 2 years? I'm like, I just don't think that's what God wants for me. So, um, I got online, like, I had told myself earlier that year that I was going to get online after that birthday. And so I did. And so I started my online meaning getting a dating profile going on. I met my husband online and I created my or I turned on I reactivated um my dating profile in September that next month. And I met my husband in November after Thanksgiving that of that year in 2023. And the rest is history. So, but later on, I think that was last year in 2025, I looked back at what I did my own kind of going in retrospect. I looked back at what 2024 held for me, and I saw that it said that that was the best year for me to get married. So, you know, difference of astrologers, difference of opinions, different of calculations. I use a variety of different things. Like I said, I use astrology, I use Akashic numerology, and I do my own version of data science also as a data scientist. I've been a data scientist for much longer than I've been an astrologer. Although astrology gave birth to data scientists, but I didn't start off with astrology. I started off as a data scientist. So I still made it happen. Perhaps there's going to be some major, shift in our marriage where we've had so many breakthroughs in our marriage, since I've been knowing him. Um, and maybe what I feel that that may mean is not that, that's when he'll show up because clearly I'm already married, but perhaps that is when we'll hit this really big pivotal moment that where our marriage really starts to really shine. And I mean, and we're good. We joke, we laugh, we play along. We have weekend plans every weekend pretty much. But I feel like maybe what he was perhaps my astrologer was picking up on was that that's like perhaps going to be a shift in our marriage in a positive way. That's how I'm deciding to take it. They say you want to take the opportunity of Jupiter in Cancer, your seventh house. You're single. Yeah. So I think that really knowing yourself is key. You can always get an advisor because that and essentially like you're looking at your astrology. You're an astrologer, you know yourself very well. You're actively dating for marriage or you're preparing yourself to date for marriage and you know yourself well. You know what you feel like, you know what's the right time, you know what feels good for you. Yeah, and if you want to take that opportunity, I think go ahead. Um and you know, yeah, if you've studied that, if that feels good for you, then that's the way to go for sure. So yeah, so that's pretty much what I was going to actually say. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. I was going to talk about that briefly, that who actually has the right answer, what's really the right answer, but you go with what you feel, the spirit realm, God wants for you, what feels right for you, want to strike while the iron is hot. You took Maria, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Anazia's course, but I know Maria. So yeah, I'm glad. Yes. Uh, so you're in good hands. And so, don't one thing I would say is don't drop your feeling for what you know and how you want to act for someone else's assessment of things. Knowing yourself well is the most important thing. And as I've gotten better as an astrologer, I can uh I can fine tune what I feel is best for me. And then when I go, and just like my astrologer, when my clients ask me these questions, I always leave it up to them to still decide what they want to do with themselves. They can use that to act or rest. It's up, they are still the decision makers. Like I always said, like I'm a data scientist, and then if you look at a particular job, if you look at being a data scientist as a job, they do that data, they calculate it, and then they hand it over to the decision makers, the C-suite people, the uh uh you know the CEOs, the decision makers, the administrators, the VPs. They are the ones who ultimately still make the decision. So and yeah, so I can go on and on about that as far as a business thing. But yeah, whatever feels best for you. And I think you're doing great. So you have my full support in, dating for marriage. And yeah, so I pray that he'll come when you want him to. Daydreamer, I'm very much enjoying this live. Thank you, Chris. I'm glad Daydreamer is really, I just think it's important to be realistic with how people are showing up. And there's so much crap out there about dating. I mean, I don't even really know because I've had to don't recommend channel. I had to click so much of that blocking channels, um, excuse me, YouTube, excuse me, YouTube channels and Instagram accounts because there was just so much nonsense and everybody was just so negative about it. And you have to give people a certain amount of grace because we're all human beings. And, it's just about being realistic with who's right for you. And the more you really stand on your values, your spiritual values, it becomes so much more clear when it comes to who's really right for you and not expecting all this extra stuff from people. So yeah, my husband is a very scientific brain person. He's a biologist, he's a researcher, he's in the lab, he does experiments. Like the stuff that he does when he tells me about the experiments that he has had to do. Thankfully, he's not doing any experiments right now, but the things that he has to do to certain animals, I'm like, ugh, I have to tell him like, please stop. Don't tell me any more about that. That's his area of expertise. And my area of expertise is the spiritual part. But, he teaches me about what he does. I teach him about what I do. And it's just a mutual respect there. And, he doesn't get science supremacy on me. Like he doesn't say, well, I know more about science because I'm a biologist and I have a PhD. He doesn't talk to me that way. So I don't talk to him that way about him needing to know his astrology and him needing to know spirituality and any of that stuff. And so, but yeah, and I mean, like we know everything is a risk. Not every marriage is supposed to last. Um, and you don't want to force to stay together when you really should split. But overall, my main thing is just quit it with the with the spiritual supremacy. Really make sure that you can give, that you have the capacity to give grace, that you've got the capacity to be in a relationship. Because a lot of these spiritual people, they're so uh, I don't even really know what the word is, but they can be so detached from reality that they don't have the capacity to be in a relationship. So gain relationship skills because you can't be so woo woo in your head in the clouds that you can't relate to people, that you can't keep a relationship, and so that's fear, that's a disassociation. And those are things, if you are truly spiritual, you should be able to recognize that in yourself, um, perhaps, and really get over that and work through that. So I wanted to, like I said there, I have got the link. I've got two links in the description box. So for anyone who is really ready for uh, for dating for marriage, and who really wants to cut the crap, because I had gotten to a point where I was really ready to cut the crap that I was bringing, the crappy energy that I was bringing. I've got that. Oh, thanks, Melanie. I admire you too, and and I'm so glad. Thank you again for joining the chat, you and Daydreamer. Um, you know, that really makes me feel good when you have questions and you're interacting in the chat. It definitely feels good. So yes, and so you've got my full support in everything you do. I can tell you've got a good heart. So the first link that I have in the description box, Single to Married in Months, that is a course that I created last year that detailed step by step um, what I did to get married in just a few months. And really, most of it is not about the man. It's about the inner work that I had to do, that I decided to do as a woman, so I can then be ready, energetically ready, spiritually ready, mentally ready, as much as I possibly could be for marriage. And then when I got to, I'm not saying that I was at my highest point back then, but when I was at a good point and really ready, and when I felt in my heart, okay, there's not really any more meditation or lighting candles or crystal rubbing, journaling that I can do anymore. Like I've kind of like I started to notice that my journal entries got shorter and less emotional about like my parents and other guys and stuff like that. I was feeling good. I was expressing gratitude. And once I got to a really healthy place for me, then that's when things really started to click in. And so in there, I give you everything that I did, my mindset shifts, the vetting process, how I chose, how I knew that my husband was the right one. Like I manifested him, as my friends say, because I knew I wanted, and by the way, yeah, I knew I wanted an Aries. And it came to me that he would have freckles. He's got freckles on his arms, and that he would have a STEM PhD. I just got really, really honest with myself, and I was catching crap from my friends and family that I was asking for too much, but I knew what I wanted. I knew the energy of the man that I wanted, and that's the important thing. But along with knowing the energy of the man, I knew that it was important for me to get right in my energy because as important for me to show up with the right energy for him. So yeah, this course is goes step by step, how I did it, how I went from single to married in months. And this is for women who are really serious about it, who really want to put in the work. Of course, I can't guarantee that it will be months for you because it took, you know, years of inner work for me, but everyone's story is different. But I guarantee I can pretty much say, if this is a level of work that you do, dating will be much easier. I cut out all the noise from a lot of these websites, channels, social media pages that kept talking about how bad and how awful dating is nowadays. Generally speaking, everybody that publicly comes out and says that are contributing to it also in some way. I mean, this was 2023 for me. Um, and looking back even before then, like if I wanted to complain about any of those dudes that I was dating, I was looking at how I was showing up too. And so you got to really be cutting out the nonsense from your own behavior and quickly cutting out the nonsense that you see in someone else. And in my opinion, God really wanted to see that in me. He was like, I feel like God was sprinkling a little bit of nonsense in my dating rotation just to see how I would react to it. And was I going to try to make it work with someone who was obviously a horrible fit for me? Or and try to force them into being the right person? Or was I saying, nope, God, give me somebody who's the right one for me? And I feel like that's what God did. So the quicker that I cut the nonsense out of my life and that I got rid of the nonsense that was coming from other people, then, then that's when it worked. So I detail in there the inner work that needs to happen and getting your family on board. Um, and with me, like I'm a Black American woman, and a lot of us didn't necessarily, and Americans in general, a lot of us don't have like that, uh, the culture of proper vetting. At least I can at least just speak from my family. We didn't always have, um, family members who are able to properly vet um, our the men that we date for marriage, and so they didn't always do things the right way themselves. Our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, they had limited options, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but they were not always choosing the best person for them, the best spouse, the best husband for them. So how can they even teach us? So I had to learn this, a lot of what I learned from outside, and I show you exactly how I implemented that in my own life without doing it completely differently than anybody that had ever done it in my family, and having it work, having the church work on my behalf, having the men in my family step up when I didn't ever think that they would, but they did. And so I would absolutely I would absolutely suggest taking this course if you don't typically have that support and you want to know how to do it. And I do offer some coaching with one-on-one coaching with uh, when it comes to dating for marriage. I do offer that in the strategies that are necessary. So you just have to really drop the excuses and know that you will get what you want. But you also have to, again, get your ego out of the way that the other person needs to be all of these things when you're not any of those things yourself. And so, yeah, I knew that I wanted an Aries sun, and my husband is an Aries. I mean, in fact, I was like, I wanted an Aries sun, but generally speaking, I wanted him to have the energy of an Aries. He ended up being an Aries sun, and he's got a Virgo moon. So he's very organized. So he's got a lot of fire energy in his chart, and he's got a lot of earth energy in his chart too. So that's the energy that I really wanted because I knew that I was the exact I've got a lot of fire in my chart too, but I don't have as much earth as he does. So I just knew the energies of the man first, and so I wouldn't necessarily like, use like astrology to the T if you're not used to that down to your partner, although I did manifest it like that. But what was most important was the energies of the of the individual. So, and then also the second link that I have in there is my mentor, Mina Irfan. Um, in my interview with her, I guess that was last year. I cannot believe that. Yeah, that was last year. She interviewed me on me giving the no girlfriend speech that led to an on the spot proposal. Yeah, that's what she called it. So, yes, that is a really interesting video to watch. It's also there was a lot that I said in there, and I was actually surprised that the video was as long as it was, but they cut out a lot of it too. So it's placed in a course, another course of hers called Wifed. I think it's called 2025. So that's got even more information on there. And in fact, I'll put it in the description box. I've got an affiliate link for that course and for her course. But then also, I just linked mine also as far as single to married in months. You've got forever access to that. And of course, if you want some one-on-one coaching when it comes to dating for marriage, you can also contact me, email me on that. I don't have that like listed, but you can email me and we can discuss how long you want to have the coaching for, what you are experiencing, how to really maximize what you see there. Because I remember thinking, I was glad, happy and glad that I manifested my husband on the timeline because uh, I didn't want to sign another lease. I was living by myself. I didn't want to sign another lease in my apartment. I was like, I want to get married and move out of here. And I had to do it in a few months. I had to like let my apartment complex know 60 days before. I had to give them 60 days notice, which means I had to find the man even before then. So, and it all worked out. So I tell you about my manifestation, um, steps in that course. But oh, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so it just depends on if that's really if you want to get married that soon. It's not that, forcing anybody to get married that early, but if you are serious about it, that's exactly what I would do, is take that course. It cuts out a lot of the nonsense in dating and things like that. And another thing, one last thing that I'll say, because it is 5 o'clock here now, is that your like I said, everybody is on their own journey, but I knew that I wanted to get married really, really quickly. Uh, my husband was not necessarily thinking the same thing. So I had to also respect that he was even feeling a little funny about moving that fast himself. He did it. Of course, he was the one that proposed. I didn't convince him, I didn't force him or anything like that. I said that in that video there, the no girlfriend speech, and of course I detail it even deeper in the course. Um, but I had to respect the fact that he had his own timeline in his head when he got online and was dating also. So I would not shame him for thinking that he was maybe going to date for a year or two or three when I knew I wanted to date. In fact, we didn't ever become boyfriend or girlfriend, but I had to respect that that was what he was just kind of thinking in his head, and that he didn't necessarily think that he was going to be proposing that quickly. So it's so much mutual respect that still needs to happen, and really making sure that you shut your brain out from listening to a lot of this nonsense online from people that don't have the capacity to hold healthy relationships, to be in a healthy relationship. Everyone wants to be spiritual, but can you really hold, a relationship? Are you a spiritual man hater? Like, you got to get rid of that. I had to really kind of not listen to some of my friends who would do these, rituals and stuff every month on the full moon. But it's like, okay, uh, but you're still a man hater. So you have to really get over yourself in that way and really ask yourself, are you getting in your own way of really being able to be in the right type of relationship? Um, so yeah, everybody just really has to be honest with themselves, and then just knowing that it's a journey, giving yourself grace, giving the other person grace, not shaming anybody for not being where you are, because there's a lot of stuff I've had to change my mind about that my husband was actually quite right about. Um, and of course, he's going to respond a lot differently when I respect his opinion versus when I don't respect his opinion. So, we got to be realistic, and you can't be causing problems yourself. But yeah, so I do coach in these areas. Like I said, I'm a spiritual coach, mindset coach, identity coach, business coach, and confidence coach also. And so, even in my readings, my clients get a little taste of that individually. So it's much more than just the astrology. What does the astrology say? It's about how are you really being these things? How are you really showing up? Um, how are you strategizing? What's your strategy? Um, oh, yeah, there was this one thing I was talking to one lady. We were going to do a collaboration, but it ended up actually not working out. But we talked about dating, and she was maybe in her 50s, I would say. And she was so upset about, a particular guy that she was dating that wasn't really responding that well. Like, he was just, texting here or there. And she was just really upset with him about how he just kind of texts here or there. So she would kind of text him and all these things. And although she was not a client of mine, um, you know, one thing that and I did not give her this advice because she did not ask me for it. But what I would have told her if she did ask me for it is, to stop getting angry at the man that you feel like is not texting enough or not asking you out enough. Get your energy off of that guy and start dating more men. Um, so that's something that I actually am seeing a lot, and especially in women in that age group, but I feel like it's women in all age groups. We love to fuss about what the wrong person is doing wrong or not doing right. Okay, you have established that they are the wrong person. You have established that they are doing something that you don't particularly like. Why are we talking about them? Why are we talking about them? Um, we don't need to continue to talk about the wrong guy if we have already established that they are the wrong guy. Do you not know, do you not feel what the right guy would feel like, who he would be like? Start focusing on the energy of the right man. And I feel like that is something that um it's like, is there a level of fear that we're kind of afraid about really thinking about the energy of the right man? I feel like it's a fear response, because you really have to put in the work to to be the right woman for that right man. So it's just easier just to fuss about what the wrong man is doing. It's kind of a cop out, basically. That's at least how I see it. We got to stop talking about the wrong person, um, and just know that God wants to give you that right man. But you need to do your work yourself. And yeah, there was many parts while I was dating my husband where I wasn't even sure if he was the right one or not. He may not. I was like, I don't know if this is really the right one. I know, God, you told me Aries with freckles on his arms and with a STEM PhD. And I know my husband or this man, he wasn't quite my husband yet, is this guy, but I don't know if this is really the right one. But because I felt God was really sending me those signals, giving me those messages that that was the guy for me, that what it really was that that was just the beginning of a very quick relationship that we were still very much, both of us were then and still are now very invested in the growth of. But when you meet people, sometimes it's just, and if, we didn't even, it wasn't time, it wasn't even time for chemistry. We were talking about values. And I list in that course the values that I had, that we discussed. We started discussing values on the second date. There was no time to really horse around with anything else. And now it's like, okay, we're experiencing how true we claim those values are to us. So yeah, there was times where I was like, God, I don't think this is right. I really don't know. But having that mentor, having someone who knows how to hold those hard, um, you know, uh, the heavy moments early on in your marriage, having someone that knows what that is like and that you can go to and really tells you step by step, that really was helpful. Having a mentor, having a spiritual guide, having someone guiding you along the process who has done it already, and I can do that for those who are dating for marriage. That's extremely, extremely important, because if you are there listening to, um, these bitter people online who don't have the capacity for such a spiritual relationship, then they're going to make you single too. Just because they're women does not mean that they necessarily are giving you right information. It doesn't mean that women necessarily are mature enough. It doesn't mean that their values are like yours. Um, this is a journey that you really need to start asking yourself questions personally, and then really seeking out those people who will support you in that. And I tell you that also in the course about building your support system. Shannon says, this is a good live. I'll have to rewatch the replay because I have to run. Just wanted to pop in and say hi. All right. Thanks so much, Shannon. Thanks so much for joining the live stream. But yeah, it's after 5 o'clock right now, so my husband is not quite done with what he's doing, but we're going to start dinner very, very soon. But if anyone had any more questions, I can answer those questions. I've got those two links in the chat there as far as my step-by-step process on how I cut the nonsense and didn't allow in any nonsense. And I got married within 6 months of meeting my husband. And then I've got the link in the chat on um, my experience with dating my husband and all of and my family background, because as you see in that video, I had, I hate to say it, but yeah, I had some daddy issues. Despite my dad always being in the home, he was married to my mom until she passed away 10 years ago. They stayed married, but I still had some issues there, that I really had to overcome in my life during my spiritual journey. And so a lot of things were coming up for me, um, when I was dating. And even when I was getting married, when we were meeting with our deacon, when we had appointments with the church, as we were preparing for marriage, because we had to go through courses, marital courses to be married in the church. They had to accept us. And in fact, that was a big issue because we were married already, um, at the courthouse, and we were living together. We were engaged, and when we were engaged, I still had my apartment for a bit, so I would go back home to my apartment sometimes, and I was spend the night sometimes with him after we were engaged. But then I moved in like around tax day 2024, like April 15th or so. My lease was up around the 16th. And we got married like 3 weeks later in May. So the church was like, and by the time, like I said, I had fully moved in, and so the church was like, "Oh, well, y'all are living together. You should probably go stay with your dad. You shouldn't be living together." And so yeah, that was we had to plead our case basically to the church because this church that we got married at was it's actually the cathedral of the Diocese of Galveston, Houston. So it's the big one downtown. So that's where the cardinal, or in this case the bishop, I think our cardinal has retired, but that's his home church. So there was a lot of rules that we had to follow that maybe another parish would a smaller parish probably would have not been so strict about. But yeah, so gosh, what was I saying? There was so much that I was saying there. So yeah, there was we um oh yeah, I was saying how I had like had to still get over some of my issues with my dad that I had. There was a lot of it was ingrained, and a lot of it was coming up as I was dating, and even when I was married, when I was getting married to my husband, when we were having to have appointments with the church. Um, and I had to make a separate appointment with our deacon who married us. And yes, deacons in the Catholic Church can marry couples. The rules of that church was for that church in particular, not all Catholic churches, but because one member of the church, one member of the couple was not Catholic, then automatically that church decided that we don't have a full mass with communion, that we have a liturgy, which is the readings and all the music and everything, but essentially just not the mass. And so a deacon is automatically assigned to officiate the marriage because deacons don't give out well, they can do the communion host, but a priest needs to be the one to preside over an official mass. The deacon um, does not preside over a mass, but he can do a liturgy. So I was saying that I had to even schedule a separate appointment with him because some things were coming up within me emotionally as I was getting married to my husband. So that was part of the spiritual journey. It was part of the spiritual journey to go through these emotions that I was feeling, these negative emotions that I was feeling that I was essentially projecting onto my husband from my dad that had nothing to do with him. Uh, so I had to go and talk to the deacon about it, I had to journal about it. So I had gotten to a good spot when I was ready to date from and get married. But then once everything started to really happen, then I needed to do some more inner work. I needed to do some more spiritual work. So wrapping up this live stream, it's all ongoing. You've never hit a peak in your spirituality where you ever have the position to really wag your finger at someone else or shame them for not understanding or not knowing or not being because you have children, you start to have children, and then you need to expand a bit more. There's some emotional things to get over when you introduce something new. You're a new person. You're changing from being single forever or most of your life, or maybe if you were married before, you've got these emotions that you don't even really know are within you. You don't even really know if it's there. You don't know that they are there until you are put into a new situation and then you start behaving a certain way. And it's not anything bad. It's just, okay, this is something that I need to look at. This is another part of my spiritual journey. And you can't just quit or stop just because it gets hard. That's part of your spiritual journey. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say for today. Um, yeah, So if anyone, had any more questions, you can definitely put it in the comments and I will answer them as quickly as I can, as best as I can. And my best of luck to any and everybody who has decided that dating for marriage is for them. And of course, you can email me. My website is linked in the description box, and my email address is there. And I think it's also listed somewhere on my YouTube profile. I think my email address is visible there too. So you can email me for coaching in these areas, these specific areas, um, because all of this dating stuff that you hear online, they don't really have a goal other than just having a long-term relationship. That was something I did not want for myself. I didn't see a point in having a long-term relationship. I wanted marriage. I wanted to be put on a man's insurance. I wanted all of the benefits. And I wanted all that protection. That's what I wanted, and I wanted someone who also um, thought that that was important. So my husband had no problem putting me on his insurance, making sure that we have the same dentist, that we have the same optician, and all of these things. So yeah, so all of this is a process in growth. And really check yourself as a spiritual person that you aren't shaming anyone for not being where you are. Part of the journey is growing with them, giving them grace, giving them space to explore, and knowing that, you know, don't force anybody to convert to your way of thinking and seeing things. This is a very individual journey. And my husband may and I may never be completely in lockstep when it comes to spirituality. And I expect for us to continue to grow in that, as we move, as different things come and go out of our marriage. That's the thing. And so we've got to be able to have grace, give grace, and really be that spiritual example instead of just being a spiritual person who shames just as much as religion does. That just doesn't make any sense. You really truly know better. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining in on the live stream and watching it. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments, or you can you can send me an email if you want to know a little bit more, if you want to work together one on one. All right. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.